And share the link.
Da, 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 da. Hello. Obviously, well, Alyssa, slide in a little bit this way.
Which way?
So we can see you over there. There we go.
There.
We're doing a little bit. We're changing up the show a little bit. We're kind of getting. We got some cats.
We have cats.
And kind of like showing a little bit more of the set versus just my mug. This is Alyssa back here, which is pointing this way. She's been the one reading all your questions and doing all this stuff all the time. She always pops in just for a second and hops back out. But I'm trying to get more of a set feel. So leave a comment or question about, or not a question, but a comment about what do you think we should add and do to our set. We also have a guest for the show. This is Eric Hart, who worked on the play as a performer and partial writer.
In the beginning, yes.
In the beginning.
Yeah, I helped write it.
He's going to take over for a little bit and kind of talk about that experience, which is really cool. Usually it's Royce, who has no importance whatsoever. So now we got somebody important to actually come on and do this. Okay, so just to clarify what the show is about, if this is your first time checking in, I have a film called Plan 9 that is doing well and kind of going all over the world. And because of that, I'm able to do another movie on that level. And the next movie that I want to do is called House of Horrors, which is a monster mashup, taking Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, all these characters and putting them back together again, but not in a serial, cartoony way. I want to kind of make them really nasty creatures the way they used to be looked at before pop culture kind of stole them away. And so what I've been doing is I've been taking time with each monster and really focusing on them and looking at all kinds of materials, film, obviously, text, video games, pornos, which is more recent, which I've discovered. Each one of these monsters has like 5 pornos, but they do interesting takes on this thing. So it's kind of has to go on the list. And so, yeah, video games, books, comic books, radio dramas, anything that I can find, I do. And the first monster we did was Frankenstein's monster. The second monster was the creature from the Black Lagoon. And now my third is Hyde. Not so much focused on Jekyll, because in our story, it's not going to be Jekyll. It's because this is a modern tale. So this would be the experiment happening to a new person. So what we're really focusing on is the Hyde element, because that will still kind of be the same. It'll still be Hyde, but the original person that starts it would be someone different. Obviously, Jekyll comes with the Jekyll and Hyde story so far as the focus of what Hyde is, but in this regard, we're really focusing on the monster. So the way I do this is I have 10 movies that you guys help me choose, that I watch, research, and go over, and I have finished all of those, so I've got halfway through my study, and then there's 20 items that I do after this, which will be video games, text, little documentaries, things like that. So what we're going to do, let's take maybe 3 or 4 questions, and then I'll go through the movies, and then we'll have Eric on. And Eric, you can just chime in anytime you want.
All right, I will.
Okay, from Old Business from the last episode, Stephen Haar.
Mm-hmm.
For the next episode, will the monsters break out into a thriller dance?
No. It would be fun, but maybe there might be something for the ending credits to kind of nod that pop culture is something. But in the film itself, we are going to try to treat it seriously, as seriously as I can. I recently listened to a review, which I should never do, of Plan 9 this morning, which described the film as a comedy. So I meant for it to be serious with humorous moments, but I think people remember the humorous moments more. So I'm going to try to tone that down in doing this piece, but I know me, and it'll probably have a few comical things. In between questions, I'll just do a movie and then a question. The first movie that I checked out was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1931, which I learned recently. This was Percy March playing Jekyll and Hyde, it was the first horror movie where an Oscar was given to the actor, which I didn't know that. But Percy March won Best Actor for the film. This was the one I had seen before. It's not the first Jekyll and Hyde, but it's the one that most people recognize by the makeup. It's interesting because with the versions of Hyde that I've seen so far, really kind of split one or two ways. Either they go Neanderthal, like where they look kind of like a caveman and kind of act like a caveman, like leaping over buildings and doing all these things and kind of like a Hulk, or childlike, or the opposite side where they get a little bit kind of like a spoiled child on occasion. And I've seen basically every film kind of choose one way or the other. Have you noticed anything like that?
I've seen them all.
Yeah.
And I did notice that, and I would agree with you on that 100%. And I actually discovered through my research on Hyde that for me, it came down to reality. The darker side between good and evil is something that you need to find within yourself as a person.
Right.
And the Hollywood versions always try to create him as being something as opposed to just letting him be something. But yeah, they're always like black or white, as opposed to just a frightening human being. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It's a very scary individual.
Yeah.
I actually had been so separated from Hyde for such a long time, and I didn't realize exactly how evil he was. I always, in my memories of Hyde, always thought, oh, you just go and hit on every woman that you want to and slap the guy who's kind of an asshole. Basically, anyone who provokes you, Hyde's reaction was always a lot larger than it needed to be, but it was always provoked. In the research, learned that's not the case at all. He just kind of stomps children and does all these terrible things in a really, really darker state.
It becomes what happens, and I don't want to go into detail, but to discover the darker side, I had to let myself go to places that I would not have ever normally have gone. And to have that freedom to just walk up to somebody, like we always talk about how, if somebody's driving like an asshole on the road,
right,
we want to run them off the road.
Sure.
I would do that. I'd be driving to rehearsals and someone would piss me off.
Right.
And this was in LA. So I would drive up to them and I would just drive my car in their front end until they pulled over. I wouldn't hit them.
Right.
But I was like, oh God, this feels good. I've always wanted to do this. And then I would drive off.
Right.
And they did get into, you get into some altercations, but that freedom to be able to stomp a child.
Right.
To be able to just pick something up, squish it and throw it aside, discard it.
Right. It's
something that a lot of people are afraid to touch.
Yeah.
But when you touch that, that's Hyde.
Well, it's kind of like as if looking at yourself as a form of a god. Like there's no repercussions for anything that you do, and everyone else is not on your level.
Right. There's no law.
Yeah. And there's no equal.
No equal.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I've been picking out as well. Do you want to throw in another question?
Sure. We have a comment from Milos Bukaraka. Was hoping to be on here because he didn't have class tonight. So Milos, if you're on,
yes,
let us know. Send us in a question.
Let us know if you've been able to tune in.
Yes. Hey, Milos. And you want me to go to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. Stephen Haar, will the monster? Oh wait, he asked that twice on two different things. Okay. Stephen Haar loved Plan 9, by the way, and it has a picture of him holding it in the store. I don't know if you can.
Can we see that? Oh, it's a little, yeah.
It's kind of tiny, but there he is holding
that's very cool. You're probably the first person to pick it up.
Yeah. Well, he said it was been selling well there, and then like one more copy.
Oh.
And I'm in that, by the way.
He is in that.
I am in that.
He's actually a character that carries over from the original film, Colonel Edwards, who is in the original film and in our film. So he's one of those special characters that's in both films.
Okay. Henry Ty. Will your Dracula be afraid of things like a crucifix, garlic, Edward Cullen?
We're all afraid of Edward Cullen. But no, I guess, yes. I mean, I am going to really, I'm watching movies to see what other people did with these characters, but I am looking at the original source as where I'm coming from with this. And obviously, there's two stats to it. There's one that's coming up with the design of the character, the way the book intended it to be, or what I would think it would develop to be, being 100 years later. from almost all these books. But then there's also, I know all of you guys are looking for the fights, like, you know, who would win, Hyde or the Wolfman, and who would win, Dracula and Frankenstein. And I know that that's a big part of what everybody wants to see. So it's also looking at strengths and abilities and who would really win in these butting of the heads. And so that's, I won't give anything away, but I'm putting a lot of thought and research into that. So the second movie of the 10 that I looked at was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde 1941, which was Spencer Tracy. This was an interesting one because it was Paramount, where all the other famous monsters were Universal films. This was not that. This was Paramount's version of it. And it was a basic remake. They were very, very similar to the 31 version. However, there's one scene that really stuck with me from this film. It was less makeup, so they made him more childlike, I think was the way that they went with it. But when he first turns, it's this scene of him whipping horses. And then the horses turn into the two girls, the prostitute and the fiance. And he's whipping them. And for 1941, to see that kind of violence was inspiring and really like it was cool to see. In the 1931 version, when he turned into Hyde, it was all about the physicality and the changing of the body. Where in the Spencer Tracy version, it was in his mind. It was like how his mind was changing. And I thought that was really, really cool. And so they're both great films, but for very different reasons. But I would suggest watching both of them of the list. They were very, very strong. Have you? What do you prefer? Do you have a choice over the 31 or the 41? Like the Percy March or the Spencer Tracy?
Spencer Tracy all the way.
That's your favorite one?
Yep.
Well, like, it was more inner. It was more looking in versus out.
Because, well, and as time goes by, I think, and as each of us grows, we see that is how close it is.
Yeah.
It's such a close tie. It's not about this physical transformation. It's not the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, or a superhero version.
Yeah. No. It's internal.
Sure.
And it really is kind of like when you look at yourself in the mirror and you look at this side of your face and this side of your face. There's two different people.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it differently. And that is all Jekyll and Hyde is. It's a transformation of brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's mentality. It has nothing to do with this creation of a monster. The monster is already inside of you. And that's why Spencer Tracy wins when it comes to that.
He really focused on that.
Yep.
All right, let's take another question.
Okay, Stephen Har wants to know, will there be a Plan 10?
We'll see how Plan 9 does. Right now, no. But if it does well and people want to see more of it, I mean, I love sequels. I definitely prefer those over remakes, even as hypocritical as that is. I always like instead of trying to tell a story over again, to develop on the story that's already there and continue that, especially with the characters. That's why I think TV shows are doing so much better right now, is that they're character driven, where Hollywood films, I say Hollywood, but movies that are in the theater are they're almost like spectacles. They're not really character driven anymore. They're more about the explosions and the CG and the eat the popcorn, which are fine. Those movies, there's a place for them. But I think the TV shows are doing better now for binge watching and taking the time to get to know characters to where you care about them. I think that's why House of Cards and Walking Dead, and I mean, more people are just binge watching Netflix. Where in the theater, it's all about just the explosions. I mean, I think that, what was it, Star Trek 2, that the fire needed to get billing by itself because it was in every scene. There was an explosion. Even the romantic scene where the Spock and O'Hara were telling each other that they loved each other. There's explosions going on behind them. So it's interesting that I think that's like a new genre of film. I think they're just spectacles where character development and things are very far on the back burner, where I think TV shows are. So yeah, it's kind of my focus on that. All right, so third movie was this 1968, The Strange Case of, this was Jack Palance. Which was also Dan Curtis production. So this was right after, or no, it was right in the middle of Dark Shadows when he did this. and it just had a little bit more money than Dark Shadows did, obviously. I love Jack Palance anyway. And it was cool to see, like, because there's a lot of Jack Palance things like City Slickers and even Batman, you know, you're my number one, a guy. Like, he's really just kind of being Jack Palance, kind of the way that, like, Christopher Walken is now playing Christopher Walken versus trying something new. And Jack Palance fell into this, but when he did his version of Jekyll more than Hyde, he was really just, like, really giving it a lot. And I think that that's the best thing to take away from the film is how strong and how much he really cared about the role, which I think is one of the Hyde is specifically different from the other monsters because, one, he's not usually put in the monster mashups. It's not until you said the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen that they actually mixed him in with other characters. I think in the 70s there was a Hyde versus Dracula, which I haven't seen, but that will be on my versus list. But he's normally not put in with the other ones. He's usually separate. Even in Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman, he fought Hyde, and then the monster mashup began. He was very separate. And I think that's because there's so much more depth to that character than a lot of the monsters get. Especially in film at the time. Like, obviously now people are putting a lot more focus on Frankenstein's monster and the heartbreak that comes with him. But, you know, back in the day, you didn't get a whole lot of that. It was more, he was just, you know, the monster that was with his arms out, and he was more of just a brute killer. But I think with Hyde, I think more actors jumped to play that role over Dracula and Frankenstein and, of course, the Mummy. Because I think there's more meat to it.
I was going to say, Hyde is not one-dimensional.
Right.
It's a creation of a human being. Mm-hmm. You know, it doesn't start off as a monster. Hyde's being is still human.
Yeah.
100%. It's just the dark side. And the other monsters the other film monsters in history don't generally, you know, except for the Wolfman, perhaps, don't start off or don't have another alter life. Mm-hmm. And Hyde has this. Dr. Jekyll, I know you're not concentrating on that, but mm-hmm. Dr. Jekyll's entire existence, entire life, entire dedication was to try to balance good and evil to cure the darker side of mankind. Mm-hmm. And through his experiments, Hyde appears through the drugs. All of a sudden, Jekyll finds freedom in Hyde. And you don't get that with all the other monsters. It's such a complicated ball intertwined of human experience that Hyde has, and no one acknowledges him as a true monster in opposed to actually just being created as a monster. He becomes the darkest side of humanity and still remains real, still remains human.
Right.
He's not evil. He's actually real.
I would say that he's evil to an extent, but he is an evil man.
Definition.
Versus an evil monster.
Yes.
Yes. Where most all the other ones are creatures. And also one of the biggest things is that most of the monsters are looked at as being sympathetic, where Jekyll's very sympathetic, but Hyde is not.
There is no sympathy.
There's no sympathy to him. He literally is just like, I mean, you kind of feel for him a little bit because of the childlike syndrome.
Yeah.
Like not knowing any better, but he kind of does at the same time. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how he's very different from the other group, from the rest of them.
He's attractive. Mm-hmm. In a dark, sexual, sensual, frightening way.
Yeah. I was given a panel at Mysticon at a convention, and they were asking me about horror and what scares people. And I looked at it with, like, the Wolfman is the creature you don't want to be, and Hyde is the creature you want to be.
Yeah.
Like, Hyde is like, you wish you could do all these things, where the Wolfman is you don't want to do all these things. And that's, I think, the difference between the change.
Yeah.
Both are very sexual. One being very beast-like, animalistic, and the other one just being that having that freedom to do whatever you want.
And my freedom in my portrayal of it was very bestial.
Yeah.
And I used sex a lot.
Sure. Yeah.
It works. And everyone's, well, not everyone. A lot of the world is afraid of their sexuality.
Yeah.
And HYDE is not.
No, of course not. No.
No.
But we'll get into that a little more. What's another question?
Okay, Tommy Jarvis asks, if you get bitten by a poisonous snake and Dracula sucks out the poison, do you become a vampire?
Well, it depends on in the novel Dracula, there had to be a sharing of Dracula's blood with yours. So if he just bit you, that wouldn't turn you. You would have to drink his blood to be turned. In the novel Dracula, it was a sharing of blood. So technically no, but you could turn into a snake. Actually, there's a Lair of the White Worm, which was a novel written by Bram Stoker after Dracula, deals with a kind of vampiric like thing, but it is based off snakes. And I think there was a movie too that Hugh Grant was in when he was very young. This would have been early 80s, where they really focused on the snake-like version of vampires versus vampire bat, which we all know. All right, so next movie on the list is Mary Riley, which this was an interesting time in cinema because they were kind of inadvertently bringing back all of the monsters. Kenneth Branagh did Frankenstein. Francis Ford Coppola did Dracula. Brendan Fraser's The Mummy. And then in the middle of all that was Mary Riley, which was John Malkovich as Jekyll and Hyde. And this was definitely the largest budget of the Jekyll and Hydes, where they had built all these very elaborate sets, and the set design was really a part of the movie. But it was also they kind of made him a little bit more sympathetic, where he only did terrible things usually from being provoked versus just doing it for the love of torture. Where like in the Percy March version and Spencer Tracy version, the prostitute that Hyde takes as a girlfriend, he really is just mean and cruel to in their regular dating, like right from the beginning. Where in later versions of it, they make that a little bit more like, I want this, you're not giving it to me, therefore I'm angry with you, versus I enjoy watching you cry, which is what the earlier versions kind of focused on, which is a big difference. Have you seen Mary Riley with the Malkovich version?
That is actually one of the basis of the rewrites that I did, was because of Malkovich's character.
Really?
Yes.
Because they made him a lot more sympathetic. I mean, he was still dark and twisted, but he wasn't as dark and twisted as previous versions. The compassion
that Malkovich, he's a genius anyway in his work. Some people would disagree, but I've always loved him because he's nuts. But that was, Mary Riley actually helped me to recreate Hyde's character. Jekyll was easy.
Yeah.
But for me to be able to switch over, I couldn't just like make it black and white.
Mm-hmm.
There had to be a middle ground, and Malkovich was a big key in that decision as to how to recreate that. So that Mary Riley, I loved. I thought that version was wonderful.
Yeah, very much.
Mm-hmm.
Question.
Okay, this is like so perfect.
Okay.
Stephen Haar asks, will Mary Riley appear as Hyde's lover?
No.
How perfect, but that was 6 hours ago. How did he know?
No, Mary Riley will not, because obviously it's a modern version. However, I will definitely be making a nod to Poole, the butler. Because in every version I've seen so far, there is a version of Poole. So even though it won't be the Poole, because obviously it took place 100 years ago, I will be doing something to that effect. All right, next movie. This would be, the 1920 Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This was the silent film, and I will. You guys might have to help me. I can't remember the actor who played Jekyll and Hyde. This was a really interesting take on it, of course, being silent. But also they really looked at as Hyde as being spider-like, which was very different from all the other versions. They gave him kind of the long fingers, which obviously would have been influenced by. No, this was before.
That was before that.
Nosferatu.
Yeah.
So Nosferatu might have taken a nod from this, but they even to the point where Jekyll is having a nightmare and a giant spider climbs up onto his bed, and he becomes Hyde. So they really went for the spider aspect of the monster. Have you ever seen this movie?
No.
Yeah.
And when you brought it up, I was like, that's amazing.
Mhm.
I've never seen that.
Yeah.
But in the production of Jekyll and Hyde, Frank Wildhorn's original on Broadway,
Mhm.
there's a character, Spider,
Oh.
who is the pimp of the whorehouse where he meets Lucy.
Oh, okay. I wonder if that's.
I bet that's purposeful.
Where, yeah, because yeah.
Yeah.
And if you guys remember the actor's name, John Barrymore.
Was it John Barrymore?
No, I did.
Oh yeah, John Barrymore.
Was it John? Well, I haven't seen it, but of course.
Yeah, it
Makes
was
sense.
fantastic, and it was it had the very similar ending, I think, except in this version, Hyde kills himself. Like he actually versus being taken out by his friend, he actually offs himself.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting because you don't normally get that from any of the versions of the movie. Question.
All right. Whoa, wait, I lost it, but it's from Kenneth Tabor, so he's.
Hey,
on.
Kenneth!
Yay!
Welcome, Kenneth.
All right, let me find it. I just moved it around here.
Well, she's looking for that. You know that in the stage production, in the musical, Broadway musical,
Mhm.
Hyde doesn't kill himself. Jekyll and Hyde don't kill themselves.
Right.
But they force John Utterson
Yeah.
to kill him. They don't give him a choice.
Yeah.
So in reality, he does still kill himself.
Oh, it was the wedding scene.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I remember
So
that.
he forces his best friend to kill him.
Yeah.
He knows there's no other way around. So they still they play both sides of it in the Broadway.
They definitely in the Broadway make him much more sympathetic.
Yes.
At both versions. I mean, as evil as he is, there's still which is the Malkovich look, where he's
Well, the love that he finds for Lucy, he saves her life.
Yeah.
Hyde probably in all of the Hollywood versions, that ain't his bag.
Right.
He's going to kill.
Right.
But you have to have. But it's the humanistic side.
Yeah.
He's a monster, but he's still a human.
Yeah. Do you have that question?
No, I lost it.
All right, we'll go to the next movie.
No, I'll get to Kenneth. I saw you were on here.
He's coming. She just got so excited that it was Kenneth.
I did. I'm like, yay.
All right, so the next one is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 2006. This was a really interesting one. This was Tony Todd. So it was the first African-American I had seen play the role. But it's a modern take, but it gets really strange because there are three versions of Jekyll, Hyde, and then this ape. He actually becomes an ape, which was very unexpected. And spoiler alert. But yeah, it's like the ape is basically just it's kind of like they took the Wolfman and Hyde and kind of merged them, where Hyde is doing everything vicious and mean and is not sympathetic at all, where Jekyll was. But the ape is just a straight up murdering machine. Which I thought was an interesting take on the film. And I was very pleased to see it because a lot of the times, most of these movies are really the same story over and over again with just minor changes. That was obviously a dramatic change. I mean, also making it modern being one. Had you seen that one? That's more of a rare one.
No, I saw it.
Yeah.
And I mean, as much as I love Tony Todd. I love what he does.
Yeah.
I love his work. I didn't like the idea.
Yeah.
I didn't like the concept.
It's very different.
It wasn't. It's no one's fault, but the people who put it together, they took a chance.
Yeah, they did.
And
Well, the guy in the ape costume.
it just didn't do it for me.
Yeah, it was very cool because Tony Todd doesn't normally get to play
Right.
that kind of role, the sympathetic one, and it was very cool to see him as a normal guy versus a villain, which he's constantly cast as. So that was really cool. And I'm sure that's probably why he really liked the role, was he got to do something outside of his normal box.
One of the best things to do as a performer is to step out of your box.
Yeah. Do we have Kenneth?
I got Kenneth.
All right, Kenneth.
Okay, I think he was commenting on something we were talking about. Yes, Hyde to me is possibly more than any of the other monsters.
Oh, I guess he likes him. It's his favorite.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so we're getting close to the end of the list. The next one is Jekyll and Hyde, 1990. Oh, this was Michael Caine.
Another great actor.
Yeah. Oh, I had never seen this one before, but I love Michael Caine. His Hyde actually wasn't as evil either. He was a little bit more sympathetic. But it was really, really focused on Jekyll more than Hyde was. Hyde was kind of a circumstance that happened, but it was very Jekyll focused, which was really cool. Just that was their different take on it. But no, I'd recommend it. It's actually on Fright Picks, which is an app on the Xbox, which now has all these Jekylls and Hydes for free. So if you have an Xbox, there's a video app that you can get on there for free, and it has all these horror movies, and it's fantastic. Another question.
Okay, let's catch Kenneth up because he was commenting on some other stuff.
Oh, okay.
Nigel. Kenneth says, yes, there was. Lair of the White Worm also had Peter Capaldi.
Capote?
Well, could be the 12th Doctor.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly who you're talking about. Well, he's the new guy, right? Oh, no. Yeah, because Kenneth and I actually had this conversation. I'm very new to the Doctor Who world and the numbering. But the 12th Doctor would now be the Doctor who's up now, who's the Doctor who's on the show now. But yeah, he did a lot of great stuff back in the day.
And then he also commented John Barrymore.
Yep.
And then also in the 20s version, did you think the silent version created an unusual atmosphere?
It did. The most disappointing fact with a lot of these silent films is that obviously the director had no choice of the music that was played over them. And I think this one kind of suffered a lot because the music had really no sense of mood of what was happening in the movie. It was just music. So I think I eventually just turned the sound completely off because it was too distracting. And I think it would be a really cool experiment to take some of these silent films and do new scores for them. I think that would really kind of bring something to light and capture the moods that were intended. So that's the only disappointing thing, but it definitely gives it more of an eerie feel in the looks that Barrymore did, because he was very focused on the look of both characters, and that was fun to see. We caught up with Kenneth, or
no, we're currently now. He said 2006 sucked. Wasn't Hyde to me.
Yeah.
However, as you said, 2006 had some twists. Was there anything in the movie that you feel brought something new to keep you new to keep for your version?
No, it was good to see the animalistic side. I probably won't be going that way. But it was good to know what other people had done, which is a lot of the times why I watch these films, just so I don't do something that is, and they'll say, oh, that's just like the 2006 version. So that's why I have to take in a lot of these movies, is to know not to do that. Now, I have a question for you. And this is something that's actually elusive in the book and all the movies. Jekyll and Hyde, it makes sense at some points that Jekyll knows what Hyde is doing. Like, he remembers Hyde's actions. However, on occasion, he doesn't. And when you played the role, how much did you play that Jekyll knew what Hyde was up to, or did you play that he didn't know what Hyde was up to?
It was progression. As the experiments progressed through their extremes, the dreams started to happen. There was a crossover in reality. And then my Jekyll, discovered that he remembered more and more and more. And in his journals, he would actually write the experiences. At first, they started off as like comparisons, and then they became more real, as I know I did this.
Oh, okay.
I know it's me. But it was a progression. Play is in 2 acts. Act 1, basically, he doesn't really know. when we turn over to all the murders that start off in the beginning of Act 2 for my version, he's remembering everything. He knows what he's doing, and he wants to stop it.
Right.
But he doesn't want to stop it because he's in love as Hyde.
Yeah, your version makes it a lot more sympathetic. It gets a little confusing in the story because they don't really define it.
Right.
And like Hyde obviously knows when Jekyll meets with when the prostitute comes to him and says, you know, because you sent this money, Hyde's done all these terrible things, and Hyde obviously knows word for word what's being said.
Everything.
But in the story, there's a key to the back door of the lab that Jekyll destroys, and Hyde has no memory of that. So it's almost like it's kind of elusive. They don't define it, but I think it's up to each actor when they play the role how much one knows of the other and when.
I don't even know if it's a decision that is made as opposed to a decision that just happens.
Oh, okay.
I think you discover it on your own. Every other there's 6 or 7 of us that have played the role across the country since its inception on Broadway, and each, I'm sure, has a different take on it.
Sure.
And we've never sat around and discussed it.
Right. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah. But you don't know. Everyone has their own take on it.
Sure.
Like you brought up the key. The key?
That's not in the play, right?
Well, the key is given to John Utterson. So Jekyll no longer has the key. But Hyde doesn't need a key for anything.
Right.
Hyde just kicks in everything he wants.
Yeah.
And Jekyll disappeared for me. Jekyll disappeared. Jekyll grew as a human being through Hyde's evil.
Okay. Well, yeah, because in a lot of ways, if Jekyll understands what Hyde is doing, it kind of puts a dark side on him as well, because he knows in the play it's not quite as Hyde isn't as evil as he is in the story. In the story, he's literally abusing and raping this woman.
Yeah.
On a constant basis. Like, she never wants to see him.
That isn't true in the play.
In the play, it's very different. But in the book, Jekyll is almost not as sympathetic because he knows this is happening, but still isn't attempting to stop it.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, if it would have been a straight play version, a straight stage version,
It probably would have been
it would have been completely different.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It would have been different. If there's no humanity in Hyde, then he's just a monster.
He's right, exactly. Yeah. Another question?
Yes, from that Taco Bell guy.
Okay.
Yay! Yep, I totally forgot about this. Thanks for the Facebook post. Are you planning on making another non-horror sci-fi movie, short film, anytime soon? I really enjoyed the Western short you made a long while ago.
Oh, Atone. Thank you very much. I have shot a pitch pilot for a TV series that we're pitching to Full Moon. It's based off the Trancers franchise, called Trancers Paradox, which is very much a sci-fi kind of action show, where there's not really horror in it at all. It's very sci-fi oriented, and we're gonna pitch it later this month and see if we get greenlit to get the series, or if many things can go wrong insofar as that is concerned, but hopefully we'll be able to show that to you guys sometime soon. This man was also in that as well as one of the leads.
So was I.
And as one of the leads?
No, not a lead.
You were Titan.
I was a yeah.
Titan, by the way, is a giant android robot played by Kurt
He did not sit down the
Skarsgård.
entire time.
Oh, the poor bastard. Like that's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other
Okay.
story.
All right, next movie. The Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1912. I can't remember who played this either.
I didn't see this one.
This was like one of the first versions of the movie that ever had been created. This one was also very focused on Jekyll. Hyde was ape-like again. They went with the Neanderthal look. But I think she's looking up to find out who played it.
Yeah.
It was once again, this was one. It wasn't as strong as the 20s version of the Spider because it didn't have a whole lot of voice, but it was also one of the first movies ever made. So you can't judge it too hard, but it didn't stick with me the way some of the other ones did. I definitely preferred the 1920s version more.
James Cruz.
James Cruz played the role.
The famous actor.
Yeah.
Jekyll's sweetheart was Florence Labadie.
Labadie?
Labadie.
Wow. All right. No, it was an okay film. It didn't really stick with me as much. I don't think it did anything different from the other versions. Now, some of the other versions might have taken from it, but it didn't really have any major impact on what I was seeing. I definitely know it focused a lot more on Jekyll than Hyde. It was all the same scenes, all the same setups. There was a lot of dialogue being said in a silent film. Like there was constant for like 20 minutes and no title work. So I imagined it was very heated. Another question.
Kenneth Tabor agrees with your statement about changing the music. He said some Nine Inch Nails would be.
Oh yeah.
Would be in the 20s version work, or would have made the 20s version work.
I think so. Yeah.
And then also, do you think the reason Jekyll in the end doesn't have control is because he wants to be more and more like Hyde and gives in to him?
A little bit. I think from the book's design, it isn't so much that. I mean, I think there's a middle point where first Jekyll is excited to turn into Hyde just to see what's going to happen. Then he turns into Hyde and he kind of wants to be Hyde. Then he realizes the full capacity of what Hyde is doing. But at that point, Hyde is now, he's more Hyde than he is Jekyll. And I think Jekyll actually loses control and is not able to turn back. Like Hyde, in the novel, he's desperately trying to turn back into Jekyll and actually can't at one point because Hyde has become the dominant form. In the play version, what was it like in that?
I found every night was different, but I always found that I, as Dr. Jekyll, loved what Hyde was. So I mean, that question is right on. It's perfect. It was beautiful because I think Henry Jekyll loved so much the emotion and the sexuality and the fearlessness that he wanted this in his life. And that's why he didn't work, even though he knew in all goodness, he needed to destroy Hyde.
There was sacrifice at the end of that.
Right.
Where in the book, it was Hyde was just trying to flee when he's executed.
Yeah.
But in that, there's a sacrifice. They make the choice, this is wrong, we got to stop. Which is, I guess, the big difference between the two.
What big difference between the two? Because he has the power to do so, but he chooses to do so, but he doesn't want to do so.
Right.
He wants to. If he could live as Jekyll with half of Hyde.
Yeah.
In my take, when I was doing it, I would have the play never would have ended.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, in that regard, which is just a kind of a question that the book doesn't really define, and it's a question that I have, is Jekyll is obviously they define him in the book at the beginning as being super good. Like he is doing charity work for free, and it causes him pain because his father-in-law is not happy with him doing this work and not showing up for the things of nobility. Do you think that the more someone forces themselves not to be good, or to be good, that their Hyde is darker?
Absolutely. Like
their Hyde, is more of a monster than like, let's say a serial killer takes the same potion. His Hyde might not be that as dark as the Hyde of somebody who's desperately trying to be good.
I related it as I do everything in reality. Like you can't take from things you don't know. And what I do know is that there are so many people in today's world, in yesterday's world, probably in tomorrow's world, that subdue what they think, what they feel, how they interact with each other. That makes your Hyde much darker.
Yeah.
Everyone has a Hyde.
Sure.
And to discover that, to grab a hold of it, I think it would make your life less violent
Right.
if you would accept this part of yourself.
Sure.
Yeah, and I see, we all see it.
Yeah.
No. You definitely will find people who live a repressed life.
Mm-hmm.
If they snap, they're nuts.
Right.
They
much
go
more.
much further than HYDE ever
I
would.
think that. Yeah. I will be getting into that a little bit into my movie, actually, because that's something that really intrigues me, is the level of the person that's given the potion, because we've only known one person to have the potion. What if there's more than one? Hint. Okay, so next question.
Kenneth Tabor.
Kenneth.
Woo! Do you feel that in the book, Jekyll wasn't allowing Hyde to do evil so much as observing his experiment, allowing his experiment to flourish?
Well, that we kind of got into that earlier, because it's not in the book. It's not too defined on how much Jekyll remembers of what Hyde does. Now, near the end, they seem to be pretty seamless. They kind of know what each other is up to, but at the beginning, they don't. And actually, there was a really interesting take that isn't in my studies, but there was a BBC miniseries called, I believe, just Jekyll. And in that, it's modern, where Jekyll actually sets up a video camera to film Hyde, and Hyde talks to Jekyll. Like, they actually have a dialogue via video camera recordings to each other. And in that version, they really don't remember anything that the other one does. They're very separate people. But in the book, it's not too clear on. It's almost that there isn't a definite answer. Sometimes they remember more, sometimes they don't. So far as the novel's concerned, or the novella, that which is one of my big questions when I was doing the study, because I think that's very important on not so much how we judge Hyde, but how we judge Jekyll. Because the more Jekyll knows Hyde's doing, the less sympathetic I think he is. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things. All right, we're getting close to the end of our movies. The Son of Dr. Jekyll, 1951. This one was an interesting take, because it was a sequel, and it's like one of the very few sequels of the story where it's a continuation versus just another telling of the original tale. It was very much taking after the Son of Frankenstein, where it was, obviously it was the son of Hyde, but it was kind of a little bit of a letdown, because he only becomes Hyde for, I want to say, less than 30 seconds, so far as the story is concerned. And then it's more of a mystery of who's doing the killings and who's the actual person and what's really going on, which is great for the film itself, but I was hoping for more Hyde, where this really didn't have that. Have you seen this film?
That one did not apply to my research at
Sure,
all,
sure.
so I didn't see it.
Yeah. I mean, it was great. It was a great film for what it was, but it didn't get into the stuff that I was hoping that it would. But it was very much the Son of Frankenstein, where your father did all these experiments and caused all these people to hate him, and you're kind of trying to prove that he's not as bad as he was, and it was the drug and
Young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein exactly was
Yeah.
that. Young Frankenstein was actually more of a parody of Son of Frankenstein than it was any of the other series. Even down to the arm and everything. But yeah, it was that kind of a feel. So it wasn't too impressive, but I mean, it was a very well put together movie. Next question. We're caught up. All right, we are down to our last movie, I think, too now. Last one was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 2008.
I did not see that.
Haven't seen it. Yeah, it's very new. I try to watch the most updated version, and I think this is the newest version of the movies. This one was another take. It was a retelling of the story. It was modern, but Hyde didn't have a whole lot of personality in this one. He was very much just a killer, like a serial killer, that they kind of they really focused on Jekyll, as they normally do. Where this one kind of answers the question that the lead character, I can't remember the actor's name, but I know he's on the the Netflix vampire mix-up show.
My question was, who was this? I don't even.
Yeah, it was a great actor. He was in it's the Netflix original show with the werewolves and vampires. It's all the big mix-up. Yeah, Hemlock Grove. He's in Hemlock Grove. It was and Tom Skerritt played the Joe character.
Okay.
But it was very much Jekyll trying to end the Hyde problem. Like, it wasn't really the experiment. It was kind of an accident that he's trying to correct ever since, where he tries to lock Hyde up, do all these things. It also starts like in Act 2 of the story. Like, you don't see the experiment first come to fruition, and you don't get to know Jekyll until after he's afflicted. So it was, I mean, it was interesting take on it. I'm glad I saw it just because the acting was, of course, you know, Tom Skerritt.
Yeah.
But not one of my favorites of the group. But this is also available on Fright Picks, which you can watch for free. So if we're caught up on questions and we're caught up on movies, this is the 10. Then after this, I'll be doing, if you guys look at my House of Horrors research on Facebook in my notes, you can see the 20 articles that I'll be going over in between now and the end of the month, which will have our final show. But what I'd like to do is have you take the seat and kind of explain how you came to be with the character and your process, like what it is that it was in your life, like from introducing yourself to the play to the process. So I'm going to have Eric take over for a second, and I get to sit in the throne for the first time in this whole thing.
Well, I'm not certain how fascinating this will be for all of you.
Well, I mean, so they know like how involved you were.
Well, it's the origins of Frank Wildhorn's Jekyll and Hyde go way back. On Broadway, though, we're talking into the 90s when it opened, and the original piece was absolutely fantastic. But the people that I became involved with in Los Angeles decided that it needed to be smoother. It needed to have a clearer understanding of not only Dr. Jekyll and Edward Hyde, but the similarities between the two. They had auditions. Frank had recommended me to them to do the piece out in LA. So they pulled me in right at the beginning, and we collaborated with a rewrite of the musical version to make it more fluid, so that the audience members would be able to come in and go, wow, as opposed to, well, I didn't like this part, and what happened in this part. We got going, we were writing. So basically, we wrote this entire show as we were in rehearsal, which was desperately not only aggravating but tiresome for me. But we did it, we worked it, we worked it, we worked it. I'd say 2 or 3 days before we opened in 2001, we weren't, I don't even know if we were ready. We just curtained up.
How many people had played the role before you?
To probably 1, 2, 4.
And then in their version, obviously, was very different from your version.
Yes.
What were the differences between what they had done prior and your version? What were the rewrites like? What were they kind of enveloping?
Well, it wasn't so much as the character of Jekyll and Dr. Jekyll and Edward Hyde were recreated. They were made more cohesive in the newer version. The guys that did it, I mean, you're talking, you know, Rob Evan, you're talking Bob Cuccioli, you're talking David Hasselhoff. These guys had been doing this on Broadway. By the way, I was doing Scarlet Pimpernel in the adjacent theater, which is another Frank Wildhorn piece, so I didn't get a chance to do Jekyll and Hyde.
Did you see it? When it
yes. I second acted it because we were running side by side, and the only chance that I had to see it was to second act it on a night that we weren't playing. And to be perfectly honest, just seeing the second act didn't work for me. I went into it blind when they asked me to do it. What Johnny had asked, the differences that the other guys had to deal with were the differences in the music. We cut 4 songs, we cut dialogue, we cut major musical numbers that were in the Broadway version to condense it, make it tighter, to drop it from 3 hours to 2:40, which is a big difference when you're sitting in a theater seat.
Sure.
We tried to bring it together where every character, we got rid of Spider and combined, which was the, he was the pimp in the original Broadway version. And we combined Spider with Utterson and made them the same character, which was unheard of, but it made him not evil. He was just a guy that happened that walked into the club. He was a silent partner of Lucy's whorehouse. We got rid of a lot of external stuff that wasn't necessary. We didn't play any games. We actually went to Robert Louis Stevenson's novella and Frank Wildhorn's musical and brought them together and made them into one.
What would you say is your favorite thing taking away from, how many years did you do the play?
I have done 6, 7 full productions of the piece in the last 11 years.
What would you say is your favorite takeaway from that play, or the story at least? Maybe not the performance, but what I brought away from the performance of Jekyll and Hyde, being involved with the entire experience, I actually found, please don't think me too corny, but I found myself. I created, through experiencing the good and the bad of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and going through the actual creation of those characters, it led me to where I am today as an actor and as a human being. It was one of the most moving and monumental moments in my life to do that show. Awesome. Do we have any last questions?
We do. We've got 2 from Kenneth.
Okay.
He's talking to you earlier about, he said, agreed, Hyde is a force of human nature within. Jekyll is the god who allowed him to run free. Who gets the blame when things go astray?
That's easy.
Yeah.
That's easy.
It's the stuff. For you?
Oh, it's Dr. Jekyll. Dr. Jekyll
for letting it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I was talking about, where it seems he's less sympathetic how much he knows Hyde does.
Mm-hmm. Depending.
On how much he knows.
On how much he knows. In all of the movie versions, he doesn't know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
In the stage versions, he does know. He does know by, the middle of the piece. He knows what's going on, and he loves it. He loves the passion of it.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Oh,
we got one
more. Kenneth, and this is for you, Eric.
Yes.
He said, I'm fascinated, LOL. How did you keep yourself from being dark after the play was over? To take yourself into that kind of character and come back to normalcy again?
I can't honestly tell you that I didn't stretch just a little bit. I can tell you that at that time in my life, I think I was going through an early midlife crisis, and the show helped me to accelerate that. I didn't hurt anyone, but I did live life to the fullest at that time to experience all of the things that I wanted to experience. On that note, I will say there was a show I did when I was much younger called Jesus Christ Superstar. And I actually had a God complex for probably the last half of that show, which was very dangerous. As an actor, you need to be able to separate that. But as an actor, I can tell you, finding your connection with yourself outside of the theater, it doesn't hurt to kind of punch the boards a little bit and play that game on the outside just to see how far you can go and to learn more about yourself. But I did push the envelope a few times, yes.
Did you play Jesus?
Yes.
Oh.
You guys have no idea.
Don't you know who I think?
You have no idea how great that is.
There's this picture of me, Johnny.
To see this.
In my yearbook, in my high school yearbook, there's a picture of me I was a football player.
Yeah.
In my letter jacket in a classroom with my hands out like this, looking at the camera saying, I'm only God.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so
We are currently caught.
okay, guys. It's our full hour.
Come take your seat.
Yeah. So hopefully I'll release the date of our last HYDE discussion, which is our big show where we'll have a music number and all that kind of good stuff. Hopefully from John Birmingham, which and we're also going to take Skype calls and kind of make a big presentation where I will go through everything of HYDE except for obviously the 10 movies. That's what we would do here. But thank you, Eric, for being on the show. Obviously, the lovely Alyssa, who's been screening all your calls and dick pics that we try to not show on the show.
Dick pics?
You know, things get a little frisky sometimes.
It does get a little frisky.
I know nothing about that.
Oh. Thanks, guys.
Speaking of dick pics.
Da, 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 da.